I would like to call to order the regular board meeting of Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. As is our custom, we begin our board meetings with the singing of our national anthem. We're very honored today to have a pre-recorded video of students from Crossing Park School singing O Canada. I would ask everyone to please stand and follow the lead of the students. Aren't they so cute? The Calgary Board of Education acknowledges the traditional territories and oral practices of the Treaty 7 nations, including the Siksika-Tsitsi, comprised of the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, and the Amskapi-Piikani nations. We acknowledge the Tsuut'ina, the Eora Nakota, comprised of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney nations, the Métis Nation within Alberta, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. This land on which we gather is traditionally known as Moginsitis, Gusise, Winchispa, and Otusqueni. As a learning organization, we are committed to advancing the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action focused on education for reconciliation. Oki, Dadanastada, Ambawastich, Tansei, Tanishi, Bonjour, hello, and welcome to all of our staff and public in attendance at this meeting. Representing our stakeholder groups, I would like to recognize Stephanie Clements from the Alberta Teachers Association, Local 38, Clay Gordon from the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 40, Alike Adikos from the Elementary School Principals Association, and Mike Bester from the Senior High School Principals Association. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Ms. Miner, do you have any changes that need to be noted?
Madam Chair, there are no agenda changes to be noted for today's meeting.
Thank you. Could I have a motion that the agenda be approved as submitted? Thank you, Trustee Hack. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Next on our agenda is awards and recognitions. This morning, I have the distinct pleasure of announcing confirmation of LEED certification for 3 CBE schools. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design and is an internationally recognized mark of excellence for green buildings in over 160 countries. Green buildings create a healthier indoor environment for the students, staff, and visitors. They are designed and built to conserve energy, decrease water consumption, minimize indoor noise pollution, and create better thermal comfort through increased insulation and improved temperature control. In accordance with the Board of Trustees Operational Expectation 9, the CBE aims to ensure that all new schools are constructed to meet the LEED Silver level of certification. Today, I'm proud to share that North Trail High School and Prairie Sky School have both been granted LEED Gold certification, and Bayside School has been granted LEED Silver certification by the Green Building Certification Institute. They join 22 other CB schools that are LEED Gold and 21 that have received LEED Silver certification, bringing us to a grand total of 46 CB schools with LEED certification. At this time, I would ask Principal Michael Bester from North Trail High School, Principal Mona Baines from Prairie Sky School, and Principal Darby McAssay from Bayside School to please come forward to receive the awards on behalf of their respective schools. I would also call on Education Directors Melody Pelling, Lisa Nottigal, and Ann Ard, representing areas 3, 4, and 5, to also come forward. And of course, this would not have been possible without the support of those who managed and supported the construction. So I would also ask Alberta Infrastructure Project Manager Chuck Azoka, along with the CBE Facility Projects team members, David James, Olena Olafson, and Director Trevor Fenton, to take their place alongside our principals. The plaques will be affixed within the school as is required by the LEAD program and will serve as a reminder to students and staff of how the CBE and their school is contributing to a sustainable future. We'll now just take a brief recess to get a photo. Thank you, everyone. Our next item of business is the Our next item of business is the Education Matters recognitions. I would ask Ms. Tarjinder Bhullar, Chair of the Education Matters Board of Governors, to please come to the podium.
All right. Thank you to the trustees, chair, distinguished guests. I'm nervous only because there are principals sitting behind me. And I was always told by my parents that if I don't behave, I would get in trouble by the teachers and the principals. So we are here today to honor two individuals that I personally am indebted to because they brought me into the fold at Education Matters. And in true procrastination mode, I was thinking about what I would say on the drive over to this event. And on the radio, actually, someone spurred my interest because they are currently writing a book on how they feel that one of the most important commodities that exists right now in the world is our attention. And that got me thinking about our two guests here today that we're going to honor. It's because of the fact that for almost over 20 years, they continue to give their attention to Education Matters, that there are children There are schools, there are teachers, and there is a community that is thriving because of them. I'm going to start with Mr. Mike Shake. I recognize that whatever I say about him will continue to leave stuff out because he has such a varied and deep list of accomplishments. But he is an amazing community ambassador for Education Matters and for so many causes. I would say education, full stop. He played a crucial role in our organization's development and also the evolution. And I can say that sometimes when you're involved right from the beginning and you see something transform over time, it can come with its own challenges. But yet we thank him because he has been along for the ride and understands that change is crucial to long-lasting success. He, of course, is a respected member of the business community, has a beautiful pin on that I wish I could wear with my outfit that recognizes that he is part of the Order of Canada. He is, of course, all those amazing words and character attributes that we want our community leaders to embody: a philanthropist, a volunteer, and he lives by a personal mantra of learn, earn, and return. And so no matter what other commodity or item he has earned, it is his return to Education Matters that makes us so thankful. And secondly, Hanif Lada, also a devoted member of our Board of Governors for well over 10 years. Hanif has been passionate about the importance of public education, and I can attest to the fact that he is such a strong advocate for youth, but also a strong advocate for Education Matters. I will not hold it against him that he cornered me into becoming the chair of Education Matters. Instead, I will thank him for the fact that he recognizes the importance of a collaborative approach and for understanding that our attention is best suited in the youth of today for them becoming leaders of tomorrow. His start on Education Matters started with the Grants Committee, and I know that by the time that he left as chair, he has set us up for future success. And so I would like to personally and on behalf of the entire Board of Education Matters and the community thank Mr. Mike Shake and Hanif Lada for all that you have done, and no doubt all that you will continue to do so that our education system continues to thrive and is recognized not just here in Calgary, but in the province and the country as a place where we support future dreams coming true. Thank you so much. And I don't see any sanitizing wipes, but I would suggest that that would be a good idea for the mic.
And gentlemen, if you'd like to come forward to say any words, please do.
Perfect, I got it. Thank you, Tajinder, for such a kind words. And thank you for this recognition to Education Matter Board, and of course the trustees. Thank you for recognizing that. You know, the irony is, when you love doing what you want to do, this recognition is icing on the cake. Thank you. Many moons ago, I can't even remember how long ago, there was one person who is here today twisted my arm to join the board. And you know what? That twist in my arm was the best thing ever happened to me, that I joined this Education Matter Board, because I firmly believe, and our family firmly believes, education is the right thing to do to give back. And I would like to recognize the two individuals who are here today, Joanne Cuthbertson and David Pickersgill. Ladies and gentlemen, they are the brain of the Education Matter. Their foresight, their thoughtful process made this education matter so successful. Thank you very much for doing that.
It's always hard to come after Mike here, so I'll do my best. Just wanted to thank all of you for doing this recognition. Thank you, Tarjinder and Stephanie, for all the work that you guys have done and will continue to do. It's been a pleasure to serve with all of you, and we've really accomplished a lot in terms of strengthening the relationship and working as a team, the board on both sides, CBE and Education Matters. And it's nice to see this coming and moving forward. Strong foundation. And I'll also like to recognize Joanne here, because when I first came on the board, I had black hair back then. And when I sat around the table, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And it was a pleasure. And I think for me, I learned a lot from her and the rest of the board back then. And we're just links in a chain. And together, we'll continue to build on what's been established from the past. So thank you, and wish all the best to the teams. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, we thank you both so very much, and for Education Matters for coming today. And we'll just take a brief recess to take one more photo. to go. Next on our agenda is the annual monitoring of Operational Expectations 5 financial planning. Chief Superintendent Pittman, would you please open the report?
Thank you, Chair Bolger and trustees. Presented today for your consideration is the monitoring report for Operational Expectation 5 financial planning. And in stewarding public funds, we have engaged in careful and intentional planning for the use of available funding aligned with the CBE mission and values and essential to support student learning and provide assurance to the community. CBE administration is reporting compliance with 9 of 10 indicators in this OE monitoring report. The one instance of non-compliance is for an indicator that is being revised to better align with Government of Alberta requirements. I'll now pass it over to Superintendent Brad Grundy to further introduce the report.
Through the chair to trustees, presented for your approval is Operational Expectation 5 financial planning. I would note that this report relates to the 2023-24 school year, not the current school year. This operational expectation is fundamental to the CBE's commitment to being an open, transparent, and publicly accountable entity. Through this operational expectation, the public and you as governors can take comfort that the CBE is a good steward of the public funds entrusted to it in pursuit of student achievement, equity, and well-being. That process begins with the budget assumptions report, moves through the annual budget report, includes the quarterly assessments of CBE spending against the approved budget, and concludes with the presentation of the audited financial statements for the CBE's fiscal year. This report summarizes that cycle. As Chief Superintendent Pittman indicated, CBE administration is compliant with 9 of 10 indicators. The one instance of non-compliance is for an indicator related to the status of CBE reserve funds. This indicator is in the process of being amended to better align with the Government of Alberta's requirements that allow reserve funds to fall within a limited range rather than a specific threshold. Trustees, we are happy to take your questions at this time.
The operational expectations policies define the degree of authority transferred to the chief superintendent as she makes day-to-day decisions. The Board of Trustees has previously reviewed the reasonable interpretation of this operational expectation and approved that the chief superintendent reasonably understands the values underlying this policy and that the indicators previously provided by the chief superintendent are acceptable to the board. I now invite any trustee who has questions about the report to offer them to the chief superintendent. Let me remind the board that the purpose of considering this report is to satisfy the board that its policy values were complied with during the 2023-24 school year. I encourage trustees to limit their questions and comments in support of monitoring. Any questions? Trustee Vukadinovich?
I don't have so much a question as a comment that this financial reporting report occurs in the context of available funding. And that's the part that concerns me. That's the part where I see risk, because we have seen relatively constant per student funding since the 2018-2019 school year. And that leaves us short of the funding we need to run public education in this province. We have, as a Board of Trustees, we have been advocating for an additional $1 billion for public education in Alberta today, across Alberta. And if the public education system, if education in Alberta were to receive an injection of $1 billion across Alberta, CBE would receive an increase of $180 million. And that's what it would take. An injection of that size is what it would take to positively impact average class sizes and to impact our ability to support all students, especially students with complex needs. So while I recognize that we will be receiving an additional $55 million this year, I am concerned that without a substantial increase in funding up to $180 million, class sizes will continue to grow and students may not need what they need to learn in the future.
Thank you. Trustees, other comments or questions? Trustee Close?
I just want to make the comment with gratitude that, after 4 years of receiving compliance reports for OE on financial planning, that when you actually don't get questions, then you know that you've been provided with a report that is transparent and accountable to the expectations we have. So thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions? We now come to the point where trustees are asked to identify their intentions to bring forward any motions related to compliance with this operational expectation. Any trustees who wish to bring forward a motion regarding exception to finding the evidence to be compliant or a motion of commendation for exceptional performance in a particular area should provide the corporate secretary and all trustees with the proposed motions by noon, Thursday, June 19th, 2025. If there are no exceptions or commendations, then this item will be placed on the consent agenda for the June 24th, 2025 board meeting. With the motion that the Board of Trustees approves that the Chief Superintendent is in compliance with the provisions of OE5 financial planning. Our next item of business is the annual monitoring of operational expectations 9 facilities. Chief Superintendent Pittman, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair Bolger and trustees. The data collected for operational expectation 9 facilities applies to the 2023-24 school year. The Facilities and Environmental Services team plays an instrumental role in ensuring that CBE schools are safe and healthy places that support learning, and I'm proud to say that they consistently rise to the challenge in a fashion that truly does place students first. I'll ask Superintendent Danny Breton to provide some additional introductory comments on the report before you.
Madam Chair and trustees, the 23-24 school year was exceptional as it saw the highest student enrollment growth that the CBE has ever seen, namely over 7,000 additional students entering our schools. And most definitely, it goes without saying that this all-time record student enrollment growth created quite the challenge for the custodial staff responsible for the cleanliness and operation of our schools, and for our trades responsible for ensuring that the day-to-day maintenance needs of our schools were attended to. I am, however, very proud to say that the facilities operations team rose to the challenge, with 100% of CBE schools having been assessed as having met the ordinary tidiness standard of caretaking and cleanliness, and maintenance activities being undertaken within the required timeframes. So with that said, we'd now be happy to answer any questions you might have on this report.
Thank you very much. I now invite any trustee who has questions about the report to offer them to the Chief Superintendent. Let me remind the board that the purpose of considering this report is to satisfy the board that its policy values were complied with during the 2023-24 school year. I encourage trustees to limit their questions and comments in support of monitoring. Trustees. Trustee Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. So just a couple of questions. I'll ask them in a bunch because they refer to the same part of the report. So what are some examples of a hazard report? Also of an indoor environmental quality concern? So what would be some examples of those, and who files these concerns and then ultimately responds to them?
Through the chair. So an example of a hazard report, well, maybe I'll start off by saying a hazard report is a report regarding an unsafe either piece of equipment or a condition that is observed. Typically, this would be observed by staff, so employees within our schools. And examples of a hazard report might consist of something like noticing that an electrical outlet is damaged, that maybe a fire extinguisher has been damaged and for some reason it got bumped into. Maybe there's a window that's cracked or broken. So there's a danger there of cuts. Icy walkways could potentially, again, be another condition as opposed to a piece of equipment that might be reported. In terms of indoor environmental quality, those would typically be related to the condition of the air that staff and students breathe. And so some examples of reports that we might get might speak to excessive ranges of temperature, so too cold or too hot within the classroom, odors coming from a washroom, potentially concerns around, seeing damaged drywall or ceiling tiles that is been impacted by water, and so fears of potential mold, or excessive noise coming from equipment. Poor lighting would also be within that grouping. And so, something that might lead to headaches or eye strain in students and staff. So these observations can be reported by any employee. They can be done so through an enterprise-wide system that we have that is easily accessible by everyone, or it can be communicated by the employee to their supervisor. Their leader then would be the one to be taking action on the concern that's being addressed. Ultimately, if and when these are reported through the system by the supervisor or by the employee, it is Safety Advisory Services. So we have a team that will respond to each one of these reports and will support the leader in investigating and attending to the issue. And so that is the process around managing those.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Go ahead, Trustee Hack.
A general question in relation to condition of facilities. It doesn't quite fit with any of them particularly, but we saw last school year, so August 4th, 2024, the massive hailstorm that happened here in Calgary. There's a lot of damage to personal properties, siding, roofing, windows smashed in, all of that, as well as extensive damage to the YYC airport. Those videos were horrific. I'm wondering if there's any schools that were also damaged in the storm, and to what extent did it affect either the school building or any program planning that had to be adjusted?
Through the chair. So certainly in those kinds of incidents, luck has a certain degree of influence as to whether or not we're going to get hit. In this case, we did have 9 schools that were impacted by that hailstorm of August 4th. Most of them were impacted because of the fact that the hail ended up plugging their roof drains, and then the water was essentially overflowing from the roofs and entering into areas that it shouldn't have. Of those 9 schools, there were 3 that were more seriously impacted. And in fact, one of those, Bennington Heights School, where inevitably it seems as if water is attracted to gymnasium floors, especially if they're made of wood. And they were certainly severely impacted for that event. Of the other 6 that are remaining, the damage incurred was less than our insurance deductible, so less than $40,000 for each one of those, and so more minor in terms of damage. As far as impact on programming, well, certainly, as I mentioned, Bennington Heights saw their gym floor impacted, and so as a result, I would imagine that when the school year started, they probably had to program their physical education activities a little differently. Fortunately, of course, it is the summer, and so weather was in our favor while the floor was being replaced with a different surface, one that isn't made of wood and hopefully will withstand, if ever we do have another incident of this nature, much better to water infiltration.
Go ahead, Trustee Hack.
Thank you. So if my understanding is correct, we didn't make insurance claims except for 1. Was that correct? Oh, the 3 were, okay, insurance claims. So money for the repairs that were less than the insurance claims, how much was that, and where did the funds come from? Or just a general answer? That's
Right,
okay.
through the chair. So for those that were less than the the insurable minimum that we have of $40,000. Those would have been covered via CBE funds. And I wonder if our superintendent of finances might want to speak specifically as to the source of those funds.
Through the chair. So yeah, if it's a minor repair, less than several tens of $1,000s, it simply gets charged against our operating budget. We'll make prioritization decisions to make sure that those funds are available. If it's a more substantial repair, then obviously we make an insurance claim, and then insurance covers the majority of those costs.
I'll pop in with a question if that's okay while people are thinking. So when we look at the number of requests for emergency maintenance and repairs, it looks like there was a decreased number compared to the year prior, which obviously would appear to be a positive thing. Can you share if these emergency maintenance requests and repairs are due to the age and the condition of the building, or are they just things that could happen in any of our 251 schools and CB buildings?
To the chair. Certainly, the age of our portfolio is a direct contributor towards the number of emergency work orders we receive and we experience. And that's connected directly to the fact that if you are operating a system that you know is already beyond its design life cycle, but it's still working, then there's a higher risk that suddenly it will fail. And so then there's an emergency in terms of having to attend to that emergency. You are correct. In fact, over the last 3 years, we've actually seen a reduction, though, in the total number of emergency work orders. And I would attribute that primarily to graffiti and a drop post-pandemic, a year-over-year drop in the number of graffiti incidents. And so these would also be treated in an emergency fashion so as to ensure that we're not exposing students and staff to what's been written on our buildings. And thankfully that has been decreasing while other work, of course, other emergencies have continued.
Thank you. That wasn't the answer I was expecting, but that's very interesting and glad to hear graffiti's on the downslope. Can you remind me what the CB's deferred maintenance is? And maybe you did allude to it, but could it be a contributing factor to the numbers that we do see for emergency repairs and requests? Like, is that all looped into one thing?
To the chair, yes. So Alberta Infrastructure stopped conducting facility condition assessments in 2020. At that time, our deferred maintenance was assessed at $160 million. And of course, we're 5 years down the road. We can anticipate that there has been a constant or a continued deterioration to a certain degree of the portfolio. That assumption that I am making is based on an industry best practice of investing between 1% to 2% of the overall value, replacement value of the portfolio in maintenance and recapitalization. And so in the case of the CBE, that would mean we'd have to be investing between $77 million to $154 million a year in maintenance and recapitalization in our schools to essentially keep our schools at their current condition. Of course, the amount of maintenance and renewal funds that we receive, specifically infrastructure maintenance and renewal and capital maintenance and renewal, IMR and CMR funding, has consistently been well below that $77 to $154 million amount. And so that is where I'm arriving at an expectation that our deferred maintenance would have grown. And yes, then back to my previous question, why would it grow? Well, again, it's a reflection of the fact that we're not able to replace systems that are beyond their life cycle, but they're still working. And so we're taking that chance to extend them out even further. But occasionally we'll have one of those then suddenly fail in an unplanned fashion, and we have to be attending to them rapidly in an emergent fashion.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Trustee Vukadinovich?
Well, I just wanted to comment that that's a huge amount of deferred maintenance. And again, it just brings to mind that we desperately need to see funding for K-12 education increased in this province. If the CBE were to receive an additional 180 million for the coming school year, that right there, that's class sizes, that's supports for students with complex needs, and that's addressing some of this deferred maintenance that we have, which we see in our schools. And I wish that this would be a priority in our province because our kids deserve it.
Trustee Vukanovich?
Yeah, I have another kind of comment question. So when I was reading this report, I saw policy statement 9.2 sets a board expectation that the chief superintendent will ensure that facility planning and design decisions appropriately consider environmental impacts, including eco-efficiency and sustainability. And of course, we saw a wonderful example of when that works so well, the LEED awards that we received this earlier today. But through Bill 51, the Education Amendment Act, we are now seeing legislative changes regarding school property ownership, which came into effect on March 27th, 2025, at the same time as the Appropriation Act. Alberta Infrastructure can now own new and replacement kindergarten to grade 12 school buildings and playgrounds, as well as buildings repurposed for educational use, and then lease them back to school boards for operation and maintenance. So if the government of Alberta and not local school boards will now own new and replacement schools, I'm not sure if we can continue to hold our chief superintendent accountable for indicator 9.2.1, which states 100% of new schools constructed for the Calgary Board of Education are completed to LEED silver level of certification or higher. So given this new legislation, I assume that our Board of Trustees will have to discuss the future of this indicator. And this isn't really a question, I guess, more of a comment that this is something that our Board of Trustees will have to put its mind to, but I'm happy to hear further clarification on this from administration if we know anything yet about how Bill 51 will impact our school board.
Through the chair, there's no further information to add at this time. You've captured the challenge accurately.
Follow-up, Trustee Vukanovich, or new comment or question? Go ahead.
This one is again related to the Education Amendment Act. So again, in talking about how if the government of Alberta and not local school boards will now own new and replacement schools, and again, I'm not sure if we can continue to hold our chief superintendent accountable for another indicator, indicator 9.2.3, which states that 100% of the CBE portion of all site naturalization and school garden requests approved through the applicable process are completed. So I guess I'm wondering whether our parent communities will still be able to request naturalization projects and school gardens on school properties once they become provincial government-owned school grounds. Who will work with parents to evaluate proposals and to support parents with understanding the long-term commitment needed to make these amazing parent-driven initiatives successful? And I say amazing because I spent time on the weekend volunteering at one of my own children's schools, volunteering to weed for 2 hours, the naturalization area. It's quite a commitment, and as a parent, I know I'm very pleased with how school staff members work with parents to make these projects happen and to be clear about the amount of work it takes to maintain them.
Through the chair. To this point in time, we've had the benefit of 2 technical briefings from the provincial government on Bill 51 and its ramifications on the way that we operate. We still don't know all of the details, a lot left to be confirmed, but the one message that continuously is repeated by the government is that the way that school boards operate and maintain their schools, by and large, there will be no change to that front or on that front. And so based on that, I would say that yes, parental groups will be in a position to continue to be able to request naturalization projects, and that they will continue to be supported by the CBE and specifically the facility operations team that is responsible for that area, to work with the parent communities in implementing and bringing these to fruition.
Trustee Vukanovich?
Moving on to another topic, on page 10 of 13, I read in this report that during the 2023-24 school year, CBE facilitated over 50,000 hours of public use activities in CBE schools. And I know that we do an excellent job of making our schools available for public use, and I wanted to use this opportunity to shine a light on some of the many ways that we welcome Calgarians into our schools. So I was wondering if administration could give me some examples of what we mean by public use activities in our schools.
Through the chair, quite correct. The use of CBE facilities for by communities during evenings and weekends, certainly a very valued resource. Some of the examples that I could offer in terms of how the public uses our facilities would include both youth and adult league sports, so basketball, volleyball, badminton, middle school and senior school or senior high school athletics. That would include, these tournaments between school jurisdictions. There's a wide range of community programs, and I think specifically of School Connections, YYC, that offer different opportunities to students across the city. There are weekend language courses, and here I'm thinking specifically of Southern Alberta Heritage Language Association and how they offer opportunities for language education on weekends. And maybe as a last example, we've recently gone through an election. Most certainly, our school sites are regularly called upon to support municipal, provincial, and federal elections.
Trustee Vukanovich?
Yeah, I'll follow up to that. So with all those examples, there are certainly many players involved in making Calgary's public school facilities available for public use, not least of which are, of course, the organizations themselves. But another key aspect is the agreement between the City of Calgary and our school board, because the City of Calgary manages the bookings for us in order to use tax, or many of the bookings, in order to use tax dollars as efficiently as possible. So again, I'm wondering if the government of Alberta and not local school boards will now own new and replacement schools. Does this mean that we will have to add another party to these school rental agreements? And do we have a sense of whether community use of schools is at risk with the new legislation, or is this still an unknown?
Through the chair, as per my previous comments, still a lot that is unknown, as per your last comment there, Trustee Vukanovich. But again, what we are hearing being repeated on a regular basis is that there will be essentially the ability for school boards to continue to operate and maintain their schools as they have in the past, and we anticipate that would extend to our ability to provide access to our schools and allow for those continued bookings through the City of Calgary, our continued relationship with the City of Calgary under the JUPA, the Joint Use and Planning Agreement.
Any other comments or questions? We now come to the point where trustees are asked to identify their intentions to bring forward any motions related to compliance with this operational expectation. Any trustees who wish to bring forward a motion regarding exception to finding the evidence to be compliant, or a motion of commendation for exceptional performance in a particular area, should provide the corporate secretary and all trustees with the proposed motions by noon Thursday, June 19th, 2025. If there are no exceptions or commendations, then this item will be placed on the consent agenda for the June 24th, 2025 board meeting. With the motion that the Board of Trustees approves that the Chief Superintendent is in compliance with the provisions of OE9 facilities. Next on our agenda is item 7.1, three-year system student accommodation plan 2025 to 2028. Chief Superintendent Pittman, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair Bolger. This report comes to you during a year of continued strong enrollment growth, and I would highlight that it is reflective of the actions that have been taken and will be taken or need to be considered over the next 2 years. It summarizes the projects and engagements that have been completed to optimize student accommodation within CB schools. It lays out the decisions that will be required in the short term to address student accommodation pressures for the coming school year. And finally, identifies the student accommodation challenges that are anticipated for the following 2 school years. Importantly, it also helps put into context the collective work that occurs on an ongoing basis throughout every school year to attend to the identified student accommodation issues, as well as those that inevitably arise in an unforeseen fashion. Superintendent Breton, who's already shared a few comments, will provide some more on this particular report as we continue to move forward in a planned and measured way.
Madam Chair and Trustees, as per Chief Superintendent Pittman's comments, the plan before you provides an overview of the challenges that arise as a result of a combination of factors. Factors that, of course, include continued enrollment growth that is well above the historical norm, coupled with how increasing school utilization rates mean that student accommodation solutions are becoming increasingly complex. This has demonstrated most recently by the student accommodation changes that were required to eliminate the overflow at El Boya School and supports students as close to home as possible, but ultimately ended up impacting 7 different schools. So that having been said, there is one measure taken from the report that does provide some measure of hope. Whereas last school year, there were 35 schools in overflow at the end of the school year. This school year, although not quite ended, now sees that number stand at 31 overflowing schools. This modest reduction reflects both the positive impact of the Herculean student accommodation efforts undertaken these past 2 years to adapt to record high enrollment levels, as well as the addition of 64 modular classrooms that are currently being installed and will be in place for the start of the next school year. This report also identifies a number of schools that are underutilized. And on that note, let me underscore the tremendous importance these schools have for us. This because of how it is in these schools that the majority of remaining space for students continues to exist. And to put things into perspective, from the time a new school is announced, it can easily take 4 years before it opens. And so that means that although the government recently announced 10 new schools for the Calgary Board of Education, the schools that are currently underutilized and have space a day for new students are and will continue to be instrumental and essential in ensuring that we can continue to provide welcoming learning environments to the many new students joining the CBE every month. In conclusion, the report before you helps summarize the ongoing work that is done to ensure that CBE schools continue to adapt to rapidly changing demographics within the city. This to ensure that CBE students can continue to access a world-class education in a school that is as close to home as possible. We would be pleased to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Trustee Close.
Thank you, and thank you for those opening comments. Well received. On page 7-3, page 3 of 11, the definitions related to short-term planning projects are there with decisions being made in advance of 2026-2027 school year, and long-term projects are described as the no expected decision within the next 18 months. My take in looking at the short-term and long-term is that all of these projects are urgent. I do have a question around whether the timeline is based on capacity to plan. I anticipate that you're going to talk to me about the parameters of planning decisions, but I'm asking if we have the capacity to plan, because when I look at it, 29 short-term projects is a lot. and 49 long-term challenges is equally challenging, and as has been referenced, a strong indicator for the need for modulars in new school construction, especially when we received 64 last year and we have not received a similar amount this year. So I'm going to combine two questions. Capacity to plan, is that a factor? But I'm also concerned when I look at the long-term list, and of course some of those schools over the next 2 years will be hopefully impacted by new school construction, but Windsor Park is listed with the potential of being overutilized in just a year's time. And because I don't have confidence in the government approving modulars, I need to ask the question of what will 114% utilization look like at Windsor Park School, should that come to fruition?
Through the chair. Inevitably, capacity in terms of the total amount of resources we have to throw at a challenge or at a problem does come to play. There's also other factors, including the ability for our communities to absorb all the changes that we are making, and wanting to be careful on that front as well, because we have been acting with, I would say, a record number of changes and in a time frame that historically would have been much more drawn out, but because of these circumstances having to be more compressed. But I would say, though, that not all the projects on the SSAP, the System Student Accommodation Plan, are urgent, and there is an intentional movement of or placement of some of those projects on the long term, because sometimes they resolve themselves. And so we see that there's an issue. They're either below 70% or above 95%, and we know that we have to be monitoring these more closely. But ultimately, these issues resolve themselves due to ongoing enrollment and or a drop in enrollment. And actually, we've seen 17 such projects come off of the plan in comparison to last year that were on the long term, but ultimately ended up resolving themselves and were no longer needing to be addressed. And so there was no need to be acting, no need to unnecessarily make changes to then only have to go back and undo those changes again. When we get to a more specific issue like that specific to Windsor Park and the projections of 114% for that school, certainly you'll also recall one of the reasons that we were highlighting the need for that school to reopen as a regular program school as opposed to the Bel Air School, where the home education program that is currently at Windsor Park will be relocating into, is its ability to have modulars added. Now, also, as per your comment, Trustee Close, we are cognizant of the fact that we might not get modulars. And so, one potential future for that school would see it being, or seeing it have modulars added and able to accept that additional quantity of students. But another course would be that we take with other schools that start getting into a situation where maybe we have to start contemplating either a redesignation or a overflow. Certainly having just redesignated those communities, I don't think we would go to the first and foremost. We'd look to see if there are other ways, including an overflow, until such time as we can increase the capacity at that school. And knowing that as we also get new schools built, and we do have currently 64 modulars being installed, you will then be in a situation where you, if the province doesn't authorize the addition of new modulars, you will be able to relocate some of those modulars in the future to those schools in need to then terminate or at least reduce the overflows that are being experienced. Those discussions, of course, as to what Windsor Park will look like will be informed by the educators or education director, the school principal, their awareness of the community, and wherever possible, input that we can solicit from the community.
Trustee Dennis?
Thanks, Chair. So when I think about where we were 4 years ago, and just your opening remarks, Superintendent Breton, of the story of the CBE today and space and how we're trying to manage space, it is incredible to think that in 2021, we seem to have a lot of extra space in a number of our communities, whereas today we are putting kids into schools every space we can find, which is incredible, really, and just being able to manage that. So I just want to acknowledge that for the system as a whole, to our superintendent's team and everyone else out there who's in the system trying to manage this ongoing growth. Just appreciation for the work that takes. In particular, I guess I have a question around Project 24P30, Prairie Sky School. So when we opened Prairie Sky School in April of 2023, within 6 weeks, we were overflowing students to other schools. And now Prairie Sky School actually has 2 overflow schools. So an overflow of an overflow. Happy to see that there are modulars being installed to be able to increase the capacity of an already quite large school. But wondering, do we have some numbers on how many students are currently overflowed from Prairie Sky? And how many of those students and possibly what grades will be called back to Prairie Sky once the modular installation has been complete?
Through the chair. So the number of students that are currently overflowed and waiting on the callback lists is 348. And as a result of the modular installations that are currently underway and will be in place for the new school year, that will allow approximately 105 students to be called back. So not quite a third of those that have been overflowed. And as a breakdown, we have approximately 50 kindergarten students within that number that initially had been advised that they would be needing to move to an overflow school, but now will be able to commence their school at their community school, kindergarten at their community school. There's 25 grade 4s, and then there's 30 students between grades 6, 8, and 9 that are being called back.
Trustee Vukadinovich.
Thank you, Chair Bolger. I did want to comment that in 2021, while we did have more space in our schools, we still had thousands of students in new neighborhoods around Calgary who were waiting for community school to be built. And the reason that we weren't seeing those schools built is because of page 67 of 257 of the 2025-26 funding manual, where it explicitly excludes non-public school boards from reporting on utilization. Only public school boards are accountable to the public for the utilization of our schools. And that piece of that report right there is why we see that thousands of students are waiting for a school in their community so they can walk or bike to school, so they can go to school with other kids in their neighborhood. So I'm pleased to see that the provincial government is building more schools, but the need was always there in our new neighborhoods. We've been hearing about this from Calgarians for decades. A question, if I may go back to the modulars. I hear from families in Calgary that are particularly concerned about how challenging it is to get into Mount Royal School. And I know that the Board of Trustees, that we've requested modular classrooms for this school from the provincial government. Do we know yet if this school has received approval for modular classrooms, because they are desperately needed at Mount Royal School?
Through the chair. So earlier this spring, Alberta Education approved 8 new modular classrooms for the Calgary Board of Education. This was following your request to the province for 64 modulars. So certainly less than what we had hoped for. Priority number 1 is John Diefenbaker on that list that you submitted for 6 modulars. And so those 6 are already taken care of. Priority number 2 also had a requirement for 6 modulars, and because of the importance of having all 6 of those, we've already completed a design and specification to have all 6 for that school and not go with a partial measure of only 2. And so the third priority on your list is Mount Royal School. And that one has been designed for 2 modulars. And we have confirmed, as of actually just yesterday, we have confirmation from the City of Calgary that the placement that we propose is supported by the city. And so now we have gone forward and requested the permission from Alberta Education to allocate those 2 to Mount Royal so as to accommodate that priority number 3, and then allow us to continue to place those a high priority for the priority number 2 school for any upcoming approvals.
Thank you. Trustee Close?
A follow-up comment on modulars, and then I do have a question about schools that have a plan in place. I think context matters, and I really appreciate your response that once we have 64 modulars that we can relocate them and we can be prudent and make all the right decisions. But I think we also have to emphasize that we had a request an additional 64 modulars. So context matters, and it's a way to address urgent learning, the need for new learning spaces in the short term, because as you've mentioned, that it takes a while to build a school. But moving on to a plan in place, alternative programs are considered to have a plan in place because we can actually close enrollment and go to lotteries. And I'm personally challenged that this decision is made solely on capacity and not on the value of providing choice for parents, or even for that matter, I assume, I could be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, of not providing families who live within walking distance the opportunity to attend an alternative program that's in their local neighborhood. I know you might have a trouble answering this question, but this comes top of mind to me when I read the report, is when do you anticipate that an elected board will need to strategically address our capacity to provide programs of choice when we have urgent challenges for additional learning spaces?
Through the chair. The Calgary Board of Education prioritizes community schools with regular programming within the communities because of how, one, it is of course our mandate under the Education Act, and alternative programs are provided as an ability that we can offer under the Education Act, so long as space and resources allow. And with these massive with this massive enrollment growth that we've been seeing, and wanting to ensure that we provide space to these strong community schools, or for students to these strong community schools as soon as possible, that is obviously where the priority is lying currently. And we currently have a total of 10 approved schools, or 15 total, actually 10 just from the month of March, but prior to that, a year or two before that, we had another 5 schools approved. And so in terms of looking to provide more opportunities from an alternative programming perspective, of course, that will be contingent upon how enrollment continues over these next number of years. But as I mentioned previously, new schools, we're probably talking 3 to 4 years before they open, based on historical experience. And so potentially in a 5-year time frame, again, depending on how enrollment continues or doesn't within the city, we might be in a situation where we suddenly do have an opportunity to start considering the expansion or creation of alternative programs in various areas, thanks to the space created by those 15 schools, approximately 15,000 student spaces that they will make available and free up and allow us to have the space and resources to now look at offering those more niche choices that parents might have and need for their child.
Thank you. I have Trustee Dennis and then Trustee Vukadinovich.
So I did have a couple questions on Project 22 P4 and 25 P5 specific to James Short and GW scheme, but I think Trustee Close's question I think, probably provided me the context that I was looking for around those. Because I was sort of interested to, is it a possibility to expand programs like science or TLC into schools like James Short and GW Scheme that do have some extra space right now, even as a way to ease some of the enrollment pressure that is happening in Northeast schools and to increase proximity for families in that area to be able to access additional alternative programs. So I'll just make that comment, I guess, if you have anything else to add to that based on your answer to Trustee Close, and I'll leave it with you. But my question is around Project 25P6. And so truth be told, when the report came to us, I specifically went looking for Radisson Park School because I was quite interested to see what our situation there was and what our capacity, or sorry, what our utilization was in that school. So we're looking at reaching 111% utilization rate next year. So obviously a fairly full school, well-utilized building. But I also know that the City of Calgary is planning the construction of a 350-unit housing unit building, focusing on 3-bedroom family-style units. And that building is being constructed right across the street from Radisson Park School. So a 30-second walk for those kids. So I'm just wondering, and I know we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know how many families will actually move into that housing unit. Construction is proposed to start in 2026, so fairly soon. But wondering what the future of Radisson Park School might be with the idea that this 350 unit housing project is being built across the street with a focus on family units.
Through the chair, I will start just by providing a short comment on GW Skeen and James Short School to say that most certainly, as per my previous answer, potentially 5 years out, where we might have some additional opportunities to consider alternative program expansion, but certainly in the interim, and as per my opening comments, the space that exists within those schools right now, critical for us to be able to continue to support students that are overflowing from other schools. And so a very valuable resource that we have within that school, in those 2 schools, in terms of the space that they have. For Radisson Park, and as you underscored, Trustee Dennis, the development isn't scheduled until 2026. And then it'll take a little bit of time before we start seeing students being produced from that unit. We're anticipating that it could be approximately 40 students or a little bit more, based again on our knowledge of the type of unit and how many students get generated by these kinds of development. And so as a result, we'll certainly continue monitoring. There is a potential it might start moving out of the long term and into the short term as we get further along in terms of getting closer to the opening of this facility or this new development. And I think what's important to note here is that Radisson Park is also, I would say, also has the benefit of having Keeler and West Dover. And most certainly West Dover currently providing an opportunity with the most available space to accommodate any overflows that might be required until such time, again, as we start seeing some of the new schools that have been approved finally get delivered. And of course, the new schools that we're anticipating that we'll also be receiving in the next 2 years of this school construction accelerator program, and how those will gradually allow for a better distribution of spaces across the city and allowing students to attend school closer to home.
Trustee Vukadinovich and then Trustee Close.
Thank you. Wow, so much happening at this meeting. I mean, I did want to comment that we've had only 8 of 64 modular requests approved so far. That is a big problem. I hope that the remaining requests are approved soon. I just wanted also to comment on Westover School. That school has these large, it's an old school, it has an interesting design with these large double classrooms where you can't necessarily, I think the idea was that you'd have desks in one section and then a gathering area in another. So square footage, it's a big school, but it is a very well utilized school in my opinion in terms of how many kids there are per class. So I think this is again a sign of a challenge with the way the provincial government calculates the utilization of our very well utilized schools. My question is regarding project 23 P36, which is about the utilization of Richmond School, that the anticipated utilization for the 2025-26 school year is 123%. And then at the same time on page 9 of 52, I read that Altador School has been removed from the SSAP list. And of course, I know that a few years ago to rebalance enrollment, the CBE did the responsible thing, and a section of Garrison Woods that had been previously designated to Altador School was designated to Richmond School. But I have heard from parents over the years who are, of course, very pleased with both schools. They're both amazing, amazing schools that offer a high standard of education. But what parents are contacting me about is that the configuration of the neighborhood and the streets means that Altador School just kind of naturally feels more like the community school for the homes in Garrison Woods. So I'm wondering, with where we are at now, would administration consider redesignating all or part of the Garrison Woods neighborhood back to Altador School? And especially with, I also think of how the transportation regulation changes might maybe also impact that.
Through the chair. So that consideration is actually part of work that is currently underway. But I do want to provide a expectation management clause now because of how, if you reflect back on the comments I indicated at the very start, saying that the higher the utilization rate, the more complex our student accommodation solutions are. And so what might initially look like a simple, well, redesignated community A to school A, for us, we're looking to see how many other school issues we can be resolving concurrently, and trying to do so in a way that will stand the test of time as well. And so this work will take a little bit of time to work through and finally come to a solution. And so I'm saying it could be potentially a year or longer before we're actually able to start sharing any sort of details as to what that might look like and how it might actually play out.
Trustee Close.
Given the context of the answers to specific project requests, I think I'm going to go to the Banting and Best, Riverbend and Sherwood comment and question that's on the short-term list. So I'm anticipating that this is likely a grade reconfiguration that people will be looking at, perhaps not alternative programs, although that would be amazing. But I think what I really need to share is a perspective that hopefully would come up during engagement, that Riverbend is often connected to Douglasdale and Quarry Park. I've seen that from a Facebook community like business page, Facebook community friends page, and not so much connected with Ogden, which is across Glenmore Trail. So I just needed to say that to share. But do you anticipate that those are the types of conversations that would happen on a short-term project like for Banting and Best and Riverbend and Sherwood?
Through the chair, and I might have missed a portion of what you were saying because of noise that prevented me from hearing, but if the discussion is strictly in regards to the regular program, most certainly, again, as we are going through our reviews, we are forced to nowadays look at issues more than just one school at a time. And so we do look at a number of schools in an area, schools that logically have affinities for various reasons, whether it's their communities, maybe it's geographical, whatever they might be. to see a holistic picture as opposed to just a one-off, and again end up in a situation where we have to then turn back a little bit later on to undo or do something else to address an issue, especially again in a time when we have so much growth in so many different schools.
I think I just want to reemphasize that the natural, because of where Riverbend is designated for junior high or middle school, I think I just need to say out loud again that I see their natural affinity is more going along further along Glenmore Trail to Douglasdale and Quarry Park rather than across to Ogden, and hopefully that focus or bigger focus would be part of the conversations.
I have Trustee Hack and then Trustee Vukadinovich.
Thank you. I don't have a question, but more so a comment instead. I do feel compelled to state my conclusion of this whole 3-year system student accommodation plan document. Could get into the nuance of each school in my words, but there's so many challenges. As a trustee, I kind of want to scan out and see the system view. The only thing that I've heard today or in reading this report is that we have the largest wait list for schools in the province. Yet, unlike charters and privates, we don't cap or turn away students. We plan for and find space for every child because that's what a good school system should do. We do the right thing, and we need those who fund our system to step up and fund us properly and ensure that there are spaces for all these students who want to attend their local community public school. CB is a first choice for families in Calgary. This document states that very clearly.
Trustee Vukadinovich.
Yes, again, so much good happening in this meeting. I just want to echo well, first of all, what Trustee Hack said. I mean, yes, the longest wait list in the province. You stated that so eloquently. Thank you, Trustee Hack. And then Trustee Nancy Close, I would echo what she says. As a trustee for the schools, Sherwood School and Banting and Best School, people in that neighborhood have such a strong sense of community. They love their schools. And there's sometimes a little bit, it's challenging to have kids in the school who don't have that same sense of loving how wonderful Sherwood School and Banting Best are. So I just wanted to echo that as well from the other end as well, from the community that loves their community schools. My question is, I see Stanley Jones School mentioned on page 27 of 52. And when I hear from parents, they talk to me about how in this neighborhood, they've got 3 schools, and between those 3 school buildings, they've got a regular K-9 program offering split across 2 buildings, TLC program, science school, and an all-girls academy. And so I do hear from parents asking, is CBE ever going to look at these 3 school buildings in their entirety? Some of my questions are, do we monitor the proportion of kids attending who live within walking distance versus the proportion of kids who are being bused in for the alternative programs? If there are kids being bused in, is there a geographical location that might be closer to where the alternative school kids are busing from? And if we were designing the use of these 3 buildings from scratch, would these be the programs and grade configurations we'd put in these 3 buildings today? I mean, I full respect to the decisions that were made in the past with different data, but today I'm wondering if that's what we would do.
Through the chair. I'm suddenly thinking of that quote again in terms of there's nothing more difficult to predict than the future. That I think it was Mark Twain or somebody, but if we were to start from scratch, maybe if I start off with that one, certainly things would look different today than they did when those schools were open. But when they opened, that was probably the right configuration at that time, the right positioning and the right layout. And then the city, though, continues to grow and evolve. And as a result, then we need to be adapting our portfolio of schools to reflect those changes. And just as we did after we finished building over 24 schools, and in fact, I think it ended up being like 33 schools in all, in that 2018-2019 timeframe, what we did is we went back out and looked at multiple areas to reestablish some of that student accommodation balancing between the schools, because that was such a huge change. And of course, it came after many years of the city evolving. If under the school construction accelerator program, we continue to see a large number of schools like we have seen this last March approved, we'll probably be in a situation where we'll have to do something like that again. At some point in time, just minor redesignation changes won't be sufficient, and we'll have to have a grander review. And that at that time, then it provides us an opportunity to be looking at multiple schools and being able to look at where those programs should be as opposed to where they currently are, how to best place them based on how students and the choices the students have been making now are looking at where they're now at and where the schools are that have capacity or that we could be creating capacity in. So while we don't necessarily look at on a day-to-day basis how many students are bused to a school and how far the average travel distance is to a school, most definitely we have that information. And whenever accommodation changes are being contemplated, we pull on that information. It informs the overall decision amongst many other factors as we're trying to, again, keep students as close to home as possible, minimize the demand on our transportation system, which is already stretched to the limit because of the driver shortage and the bus shortage. So this is definitely a factor that's contemplated as part of that. And I hope I've answered your question.
Trustee Close.
Under system initiatives 7-5, page 5 of 11, I think I couldn't think of an example other than maybe shelters of what non-residential areas are. So the impact of registration from non-residential areas. Can you give me an example?
Through the chair, yeah, this is one that I actually had to ask about when it first came to my attention, probably like 2 years ago. And it was thanks to this record amount of enrollment growth. And suddenly we were having families living in hotels near the airport and in other areas that historically would not have been the case. Potentially, there was a smaller number and maybe they were being accommodated by friends or family relatives. But suddenly now we're having a much larger number of students in industrial areas. And so very administratively burdensome to be designated one by one, case by case for these kinds of incidents. So we've decided to instead look at having a permanent designation. And so if there is a student within, for whatever reason, within an industrial area, automatically we know where those students are needing to be registered, and they can do so themselves through School Engage.
Trustee Close.
I think I have a couple more. In the same piece of system initiatives, the land development on Cetina, can you confirm that these developments will not just impact Lakeview, but impact communities along the whole western edge? And in fact, and I'm counting on you to recall our capital plan ranking criteria, because I'm hoping that the development that is going to happen, the 3 developments that are actually happening on the Cetina land, will actually accelerate the priority of new schools that we need in the south. But am I just being hopeful, or is that a possibility that will happen under our new capital plan ranking criteria? And just confirm that it is along the western edge that will be impacted.
Through the chair, most definitely not just a Lakeview impact. In fact, probably the 2 closest vacant school sites that we have are in the Signal Hill area. And so just across from the the ring road. And so even if we wanted to confine it to Lakeview community, the schools there would not have the capacity. So this is going to be an impact all across the western edge of the city in that area. As far as the school capital or the new school capital ranking criteria that you have established and that you approved adjustments to this last October, because these lands fall outside the CBE boundary and will always fall outside the CBE boundary, no, they are not. They are not reflected within the scores. And so what I would offer for these circumstances is that once these developments start being further along, that at some point in time, probably what you would see is administration bringing to you a 3-year school capital plan with a motion for an exception that would, for various reasons, but namely to accommodate or to consider the volume of students in that area, to then include that exceptionally for this community or that community or a number of communities that would be receiving these students. So that would be factored in a more of an exceptional fashion as opposed to making it by default, because this will be exceptional. The city of Calgary, by and large, is larger than the CBE boundaries, and we will continue to ensure that the CBE boundaries follows the CBE boundaries, but in that one area, obviously that will never happen given the reserve designation.
Just to follow up on that, do those developments have the same expectations of laying aside land for schools or not? Or that's exactly what you're saying?
Through the chair. So that is, or to the chair, that is exactly it. In this case, these communities are being developed by the Tsuut'ina Nation and are not subject to the need for the taking of reserves to create opportunities for schools on those properties. And so those students obviously will be looking for opportunities within the CBE school boundaries to be able to attend K-12.
I would just comment that that is very concerning, given that the lands available will be within established communities that have probably thought they were never going to get a school, and then potentially could down the road if those are the only available sites. Okay, Chief Pittman?
Just in further follow-up to this discussion, I think it's important to recognize that there are many moving parts to this that go far beyond simply the allocation of land or allocation or designation of spaces. And we're working closely with Alberta Education to ensure that all pieces around this very unique and very exciting circumstance for Tsuut'ina, but very unique experience within the province, to understand how provincially and within CBE schools we account for student population in a way that can create stability for communities in all ways that they may be impacted.
Trustee Close?
Thank you. Moving on to 7-10 under open, limited, and closed status, I just really have a comment. I recognize that the number of closed and limited schools provides less flexibility and fewer options from an accommodation point of view. But of course, we have parents and families who now no longer have a choice when it comes to desired high school programming options, and that's been a concern that has escalated. And then, do you want to respond? It was just a comment. It's just our reality, an unfortunate reality that I'm not sure we can change until we get the South Calgary High School. Can I move on to specialized class moves? When we close a class, is it open somewhere else, perhaps for a different grade configuration? And can you comment, I'm just thinking of PLP, like I understand how we try to see where the kids are and then move them, but I'm just wondering, have we actually closed a class and it's closed? Or is it open somewhere else? And can you comment specifically on the 2 closed gate classes at Louis Riel and the 1 closed gate class at Henry Wisewood? Through the chair. And so each year, the program accommodation planning process identifies areas of increasing demand for specialized classes. And this is a significant process that looks at specialized classes across the system, as well as their utilization over time in order to ensure that we're stewarding our resources appropriately. And so specifically, when a specialized class is closed, the resources, staffing, classroom supplies, materials, those kinds of things, are reallocated to additional specialized classes that would benefit or use those. Some of them are open, and some of them just require those additional supports. In regard to your question around the number of GATE classes, the GATE classes in CBE are determined in part by the number of referrals that are brought forward and the number of students transitioning out of those programs. For the 25-26 school year, there was a net reduction in the students' enrollment base who are leaving the GATE program versus those new students who are being brought forward and being requesting or recommended for that program. And so and that net reduction resulted in a lower number of students, specifically at Louis Riel and Henry Wisewood, where GATE enrollment is quite stable, and then there isn't a net difference at Hillhurst or Queen Elizabeth High School. And so those remain stable for the upcoming school year. Thank you.
Trustee Vukadinovich?
On page 4452, I see that the HERA program is closing at Dr. Oakley School. So I'm wondering what led administration to this decision, what will happen to the students attending that class, and how will we accommodate their complex needs going forward?
Through the chair. HERA is currently a single specialized class in CBE offered in partnership with Trellis for students in grade 8 through 12, ages 13 through 17. And the intention of this program is to return these students after 1 year to their community school. HERA's specialized program focuses on sexual exploitation and the requirement for additional community partnership and in-home support. A number of factors were carefully considered when thinking about closing this program. That includes declining enrollment over time, attendance, limited academic programs at the age level that's required, and students in classes, and how we might be able to better use resources across the system to meet these student needs. Declining enrollment, we currently have the class at 11 students, but only 4 consistently attending. And in addition to limited academic programming, many of these students would be at a high school level for 1 year, and with limited opportunity to access other kinds of options that are available in high school, there is a potential impact to reduce or extend graduation timelines for these individuals. And so each student at HERA has carefully been considered for programming options in the upcoming year. System, area, and school-based staff, in collaboration with our Trellis partner, are working carefully with HERA students and their families to develop a transition program. This could include looking at alternative programs such as Discovering Choices, a different specialized class for mental health, or alternate therapeutic programming such as HUL. Some students have chosen to attend their designated community support school with the support. Trellis, our partner in HERA, offers community support and outreach, and this service will continue to be available for these students in the coming year. Thank you.
Any other comments from trustees? Trustee Vukadinovich?
Well, I'm just floored at what CBE does with the offerings that we have for students. It's amazing.
Thank you. Chief Pittman, closing remarks?
Through the chair, I recognize that I had the opportunity to make opening remarks, but felt compelled upon listening to trustee questions and Superintendent Breton and as well as Superintendent Turner, the fulsome responses. And it caused me to reflect as administration on a few fronts. And I think trustees have captured a whole range of points, but I do feel compelled, given the experience of the last 3 years, that in the context of system-wide, not simply sole geographical areas, we have had a continued and massive challenge for space. We have sought to be responsive in a manner that is in accordance with the values expressed by the Board of Trustees. And as administration works through each of these, and as Superintendent Breton spoke about, solution projects that involve 5 different sites, different grade configurations, all at one time, the many challenging impacts that that has for families, for students, and for staff. When we engage in overflow situations and then our commitment to have students be able to attend closest to home and call back, it creates additional transitions. We have a facility issue that directly impacts outcomes. And it takes significant effort for teachers, principals, education directors, and facilities staff to continue to communicate, engage, follow through, build understanding, and first and foremost, make sure that education is attended to in a way that builds community and a sense of belonging. So this is not simply a facilities report. This is not simply a student accommodation plan. It is a reflection of our commitment to utilize our spaces within the resources available, to consider where we can be creative with programming that meets student needs in different ways, and where we manage the range of partnerships that happen every day when I look at the communication that occurs between our planning department, facilities staff, education directors, principals, and teachers. This report lays out that plan, but I felt compelled to point out the human elements that are also reflected and the impacts connected to educational outcomes.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent Pittman. Next on our agenda is item 8.1, proposed amendments to governance culture and operational expectations policies. This report is for the board to consider revisions to its governance culture 3, board job description, operational expectations 1, global operational expectations, and governance culture 5E, audit and risk committee terms of reference. As required in legislation, the board regularly reviews its policies and procedures. These policies have been reviewed and areas of improvement were identified. The proposed amendments are in front of the board today for consideration. Is there a trustee who wishes to bring forward a motion regarding this report? Trustee Dennis?
Thank you. That the Board of Trustees gives first reading to the amendments to Governance Culture 3 Board Job Description Policy as provided in Attachment 1 to this report.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees gives first reading to the amendments to Governance Culture 3 Board Job Description Policy as provided in Attachment 1 to this report. Trustee Dennis, would you please open debate?
I will, thank you. When the board amended this GC in 2020, the board at the time included language reflective of a more formal enterprise risk management structure. Over the past few years, CBE has been looking at how we already assess and manage risk at the CBE and considering whether a costly, more formal ERM structure is actually necessary, while still maintaining maximum transparency and effectiveness. As a school board, we are highly regulated by the Government of Alberta. Those regulations are quite prescriptive and, in essence, designed to assist school divisions in avoiding or managing risk. In many ways, each of our OEs and results reports, the budget and the education plan, quarterly reports, the EERR, and even the SSAP and capital plan give the board a regular look at how the organization is performing, how we are managing our resources, how we are serving students and Calgarians today, and our plans for the future. Our current approach is sufficient. Even without a formal ERM structure, the Board of Trustees, and with the support of our Audit and Risk Committee, will still have oversight and eyes on risk. With that, I trust my colleagues will support the language as it aligns more closely with our ongoing approach.
Thank you, Trustee Dennis. Are there any trustees who wish to enter first round of debate? Are there any trustees wishing to enter second round of debate? Seeing none, Trustee Dennis, would you like to close?
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Are there any further motions on this report? Trustee Dennis?
Thank you. That the Board of Trustees gives second reading and thereby final approval to the amendments to Governance Culture 3 Board Job Description Policy as provided in Attachment 1 to this report.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees give second reading and thereby final approval to the amendments to Governance Culture 3 Board Job Description Policy as provided in Attachment 1 to this report. Trustee Dennis, would you please open debate?
I won't repeat myself. My debate for the previous motion would stand for this motion as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any trustees who wish to enter first round of debate? Anyone wishing to enter second round of debate? Trustee Dennis, do you care to close?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any further motions on this report? Trustee Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. That the Board of Trustees gives first reading to the amendments to Operational Expectations 1, Global Operational Expectations, as provided in Attachment 2 to this report.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees gives first reading to the amendments to Operational Expectations 1, Global Operational Expectations, as provided in Attachment 2 to this report. Trustee Dennis, would you please open debate?
Sure will. Thank you. So because the board has just approved the previous two motions and the adjustments made to GC3, it would be important to also have the operational expectation in alignment with that GC. So I trust that my colleagues will also vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Are there any trustees wishing to enter first round of debate? Any wishing to enter second round? Trustee Dennis, do you wish to close debate?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Are there any further motions on this report? Trustee Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. That the Board of Trustees gives second reading and thereby final approval to the amendments to Operational Expectation 1, Global Operational Expectations Policy, as provided in Attachment 2 to this report.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? Trustee Hack?
I know in the past, we've done 3 readings for certain things that we have passed. I just have a quick question for anybody watching, why we're not doing 3, or that 2 is sufficient for OEs and GCs.
Through the chair, the board's governance culture policies actually only ever require 2 readings. So that's why we've managed it this way as well.
Thank you very much. So the motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees give second reading and thereby final approval to the amendments to Operational Expectation 1, Global Operational Expectations Policy, as provided in Attachment 2 to this report. Trustee Dennis, would you like to open debate?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Are there any trustees wishing to enter first round of debate? Any trustees for second round? Trustee Dennis, do you care to close debate?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any further motions on this report? Trustee Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. That the Board of Trustees approves the amendments to GC5E Audit and Risk Committee Terms of Reference as provided in Attachment 3 to this report.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees approves the amendments to GC5E Audit and Risk Committee Terms of Reference as provided in Attachment 3 to this report. Trustee Dennis, would you like to open debate?
Yes, I would, thank you. So clearly, all of these motions today are related, but I will add a comment specific around the terms of reference and just highlight an item there. So the Board of Trustees and the Audit and Risk Committee have greatly appreciated the financial health matrix that has been a regular addition to the quarterly variance reports. It is easy to understand, it is transparent, and considers items of interest and importance. As indicated in the revisions to the terms of reference, you will see that the committee and Board of Trustees will also have a regular opportunity now to look at our operational risk exposure along with the financial health matrix. And I think we can anticipate that that information will be equally as transparent.
Thank you. Are there any trustees that wish to enter first round of debate? Anyone wishing to enter second round of debate? Trustee Dennis, do you wish to close debate?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to the consent agenda of our meeting. There were no items pulled from consent. As such, all items will be deemed to be approved with the agenda. This concludes the public portion of today's agenda. The board has 2 land, 2 legal, 3 labor, and 3 strategic planning matters to deal with in private. I would like to thank all of you who joined us for this meeting. Our next public board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 24th, 2025.